Welcome, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. And I'd also like to welcome our speaker for the evening, Dr. Sienna Casper. So a couple of things before we get started. Everybody will be muted during the presentation, just so that you note that. If you'd like to communicate or ask questions, please just type them in the chat box and we will be keeping an eye on those. I'd also like to remind people that the Alzheimer's Society is still open. Although our offices are closed at the moment, we are still open for any type of services that you might need from us, so please don't hesitate to give us a phone call. Right now, people living with dementia need support more than ever. These are challenging times and the needs are great. Our services are free of charge, and we're asking that if you're able to help more families receive the support they need, please donate. There will be an opportunity at the end of this presentation, and thank you for joining us and for your continued support. So now I will introduce Dr. Casper. She's an associate professor at the University of Lethbridge in the Faculty of Health Sciences, Therapeutic Recreation Program. Her areas of research include organizational behavior, empowerment, interprofessional teamwork, and collaboration, quality of care, and quality of work life in dementia care. Dr. Casper is a certified therapeutic recreation specialist and a dementia care specialist. She has worked as a clinician and a consultant in long-term care facilities in both Canada and the United States for over 20 years. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Casper.
Virtual presentation, and I hope that everyone who's online is feeling well and healthy and safe, and also feeling still connected to the things that matter most. So it's a real privilege for me to be here with you virtually today. So I was asked to give a presentation on recreation for people with dementia, and I was told that there could be such a variety of people in the audience that I was tasked with this to give a condensed presentation on this very important topic, and try to ensure that it was meaningful and relevant to formal and informal caregivers and family members and people with dementia. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. We'll see. And I'm trying to advance the slide. Nope. There we go. So the evidence behind the beginning of this presentation came from a study that I recently did that looked at non-pharmacological interventions to address behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. And this study is actually published in an open access journal called Innovations in Aging. And so if you're interested in actually reading more about this, it's published and available. You just have to Google my name on Google Scholar and you'll find it. So sorry about the small type on this, but I want to define these terms that I'm going to be talking about so that we all have a clear understanding of what I mean when I say BPSD. So behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia refer to the often distressing, non-cognitive symptoms of dementia. And so these would include things like agitation or aggression, and sometimes also referred to as responsive behavior. Really, it's the behaviors that indicate that the person with dementia is experiencing distress, and these behaviors often cause distress for the people around the person with dementia as well. And non-pharmacological interventions refer to interventions that do not use medications. And I'm just realizing that my little image is covering some of the words, but sorry about that. Anyway, there are two categories of non-pharmacological interventions, and they can be grouped into either indirect interventions or direct interventions. And indirect interventions are aimed at decreasing BPSD through working with caregivers or adapting the environment. In other words, these are the things that we can do to help decrease these behavioral or the stress responses by the individual with dementia by adapting that person's environment, whether that is helping to increase education, understanding, and behaviors of the people around them, around the person with dementia, and how they may be interacting with them, or the actual physical built environment. So it's both the social environment and the physical built environment. And direct interventions, though, are targeted directly to the person with with dementia. So these can be things like actually engaging in very specific interventions like therapy, sensory-based therapy, light therapy, music therapy, touch therapy, recreation therapy, etc. Oh, I keep on wanting to just hit advance in my. So the study aim was to identify the factors that contribute to the effectiveness of non-pharmacological interventions in addressing BPSD. And so what we did is we conducted what's called a realist review. And the main thing for you to be aware of is that we reviewed in very great detail 73 published studies that had tested and looked at non-pharmacological interventions to help decrease BPSD. And of those, we systematically evaluated the effectiveness of each of those interventions. And we rated them as A, B, C, D, or E. And A is really good evidence to support recommendation for this intervention. B is fair evidence to support recommendation. C is simply insufficient. There's not enough evidence, or the quality of the study was just too weak to be able to say that either the results were grounded in evidence, if you will. D is fair evidence to support that you shouldn't do this, that it doesn't work, it's not helpful. And E is really strong evidence saying, no, this does not work. And so you can see the relative frequency of all of the studies that fell into those different categories. And you'll see there's a lot of range in non-pharmacological interventions. So really looking at the ones that we decided to group the A and B's together and the D's and E's together and keep the C's in the middle. So 13 of the studies really looked at just training and education of caregivers and care providers, and that included both informal and formal caregivers. And 39% of them were quite effective. 31% we couldn't really tell, and 31% weren't effective. And so what that means is it's really inconsistent. There's not any consistency in saying, yes, if we do this, we'll be able to decrease BPSDs. Music-based programs, again, were more effective than not, but not across the board. And those are the two largest groups. There was the most studies that had looked at music-based interventions and also education. And then if we go down, you can see aromatherapy really just didn't have insufficient evidence. Nothing was strong for or against. Massage therapy was very mixed. Reminiscence, again, was not strong, neither for or against. Art and theater, same thing. Well, actually, some of reminiscence was ineffective. And animals, both robotic, which is a new trend, and alive, again, kind of 50-50. There's not a lot of studies, as you can see. A lot of these sample sizes, there's only one study or 3 studies or 2 studies that looked at these interventions. And there's not a lot. And one of the reasons is because it's non-pharmacological, so there's no money to be made. This isn't a treatment that the pharmaceutical industry can make money on. These are tend to be therefore not well-funded studies, and so it's harder to do research on these, but so important that we do. So So here's for if you are more a visual learner and you want to be able to see graphs. This is the same exact information with it just in a scale. So the yellow bars are how effective they were, the effectiveness when they were effective. C was not enough information to say they were effective or not, and D and E indicates that they were not effective. And I am happy to share these slides with anyone after this presentation. So after we finish this review, we developed this model okay, there's my pointer. We developed a model to help try to say, what does this mean, and how can we use this information to help people who are working with individuals with dementia, especially around non-pharmacological interventions. And I'm just going to describe what this model says. So basically, we said the context really matters, and we place the context from the medical model to the social model. And this is really looking at person-centered care, and this is the more kind of traditional medical model of care. And we said that there are three categories of interventions. The first two are indirect interventions, and the last one is direct. So the first indirect intervention is really the caring environment. And that's looking at what are we surrounding the person with dementia in? And that's both physical and also social. And what you can see here is that these interventions equal the outcomes. And that's what this kind of says. So if the context is institutionalized environment, then that equals increases in BPSDs. So when there's no effort to make the physical environment more home-like, there's no effort to ensure that there's wayfinding for the individual. We're not supporting the individual with dementia in an environment that's conducive to their best possible functioning. If the context focuses on just the physical environment and ensuring that it is supportive of that individual, like light levels and sound levels and accessibility and wayfinding, that is inconsistent. It's necessary, but it's not enough to ensure a decrease in BPSDs. In order to get to that in the caring environment, we also have to be able to focus on the social environment. In other words, the quality of the relationships of the caregiver and the care recipient, and the quality of the relationships with the person with dementia and those around them. So if it's in a long-term care facility, how well do they get along with their table mates at the dining table? How are the relationships supported between the care staff and the care recipients? And that, you have to, so that is what is really leads to this decrease in BPSDs. So again, the physical environment is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You still have to do this, but this has to be added in there as well in order to really get at the decreases. The next intervention is really care skills development and maintenance. And we could categorize the interventions that we looked at that as that. And what we found is that when there is a lack of dementia-specific education and training for those people around who circle around the person with dementia, then that increases BPSDs because of the lack of understanding of communication and how to best support the person, and even understanding what's happening on the dementia journey. And then if we look at an initial training in education, so they get a foundation of training. They go to maybe one workshop, or they have the pieces training once. That's necessary, but not sufficient. In order to really get at and see outcomes that decrease BPSDs, we have to have ongoing training and support. It can't just be considered, okay, a box that we check and say, okay, we got that training, everyone's had this training, and then we don't have anything else that's not ongoing to support that, to have that grow, to ensure that as new people come into this person's life, both whether it's in a facility or at home, that there's that ongoing training and support, and that is what is actually sufficient to decrease BPSDs. And then finally, the direct intervention is individualized care. And when the context is a focus predominantly on safety, on making sure that the individual with dementia is safe, that actually results in increases in BPSD. If the context focuses on safety and also on the diagnosis, in other words, making sure that where they are in the trajectory of the journey of dementia, that we are matching the interventions that we're offering them to the remaining skills that are still there and the remaining abilities, that is, again, necessary but not sufficient. So it will produce inconsistent responses. When we focused on a truly individualized approach, though, where we're really looking at who is this person, what gives them meaning, what's their history, how do we honor their sense of personhood, their sense of self, their sense of dignity, their purpose, and how do we individualize our care plans, our care for, and our interventions to them. That's what's actually necessary in decreasing BPSDs. So it's a complex model. I hope I didn't, I'm okay for time. But that's kind of what we said. If you want to use non-pharmacological interventions, both in adapting the care environment, looking at education and training, and looking at actually individualized recreation programming or programming at all, how do you actually get at decreasing BPSDs? And I'll go back and say that that's one of the things that we found with a lot of those, like even massage therapy or music therapy. I'll take music therapy as an example. If you just give everyone the same music and we don't actually individualize it to their unique history, their background, their culture, their values. I mean, we all have different preferences. You will have, again, an inconsistent response to that. Some may like it and some may not. If you individualize it and you make it relevant to this person, then you're going to decrease the BPSDs. It'll be more effective. Hopefully that makes sense. So basically what we're also saying is to be able to get at it at that last statement of how do you individualize it is through, as a recreation therapist, working with individuals, it's through what we call an assessment. An assessment is really to gather, select information about an individual for the purpose of making decisions regarding their program or treatment plan. And so we need to look at what should be included in our assessment. And I think it has to include things like prior life roles, their interests, their sources of pleasure, what are their customary routines, what are their preferences, what are their traditions, what are their behavioral triggers, how have people in their life interpreted successfully their nonverbal interactions? How can we recognize when a trigger is going to happen? What are the successful interventions that have been used? And what are their strengths? What are the things that they have held on to, and what can we focus on making sure that we can maintain? And so what I'd like you to do, those of you who are online, who are with us, who may work in an organization where you conduct assessments, I'd like you to look at this and say, do we collect all this information in our assessment? Are we missing any of this? Can we add this into our assessment? And are we, and those of you who may be family caregivers, if you're on this journey, how do you make sure that all of this information gets shared with a formal caregiver who may be assisting you and assisting the person with dementia who you're caring for? So these are things that I think are essential in order for us to be able to actually individualize not just recreation, but all care with individuals with dementia. And from that, then we develop a care plan that's actually individualized and focused on strengths. And so what I'm hoping is that your care plans are strength-based as well as not just problem-oriented. So are there within the care plan's goals for maintaining or improving? And we can improve through the journey of dementia. We can improve certain areas, but we have to have that be a focus. So improving specific strengths and abilities, reducing the possible effects from deficits and limitations. There are some things that we're not going to be able to stop, deficits that we're not going to be able to stop from occurring, but can we put things in place to reduce the effects of those deficits continuing or limitations from occurring? How do we maintain lifestyle preferences? Is that embedded in our care plans where we actually know what they are and that's part of the care plan? Enhancement of life experiences. What are the things that that person with dementia would choose, that they would want to have to ensure that they can continue to have as a life experience, and how can we enhance that? And then again, interventions that incorporate lifetime interests. And then anyone who's ever heard me present probably knows that I'm really a strong advocate for making sure that everyone has access to this information. And that's everyone, like that the entire, everyone who touches the person with dementia knows what the care plan goals are and what that assessment information is. And because you can have the best assessment with the best well-rounded information and an outstanding care plan, and if it's not a document that actually is creating care, there's everyone who's touching that person with dementia, touching them, I mean, both emotionally and spiritually and physically in care, etc. They all have to have access to that, and they all have to have input into it. So what are your processes for ensuring that? And I hope that we're now going into the participatory learning activity in this presentation, and I hope that everyone's read that you should have a pen, and you should have 10 small pieces of paper in preparation for this part of this presentation. If you don't have that, please go run and get it now. And if you don't have 10 small pieces of paper, that's okay. Just get one piece of paper, and I'll help you adapt this activity. It would be better if you had 10 small, but you should have them now. And I'm going to breathe to give you a moment to go grab them if you need to. So what I want you to do is I want you to finish this sentence, I am a, 10 times. And you're going to finish it with a word or a very short phrase that describes who you are in different aspects of your life. So for me, I am a teacher. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a wife. I am an outrigger canoe paddler, which is new for me. I am a runner. I'm a reader. I am a cyclist. I am a sister. Those are the things that help to make me who I am. I'm an avid reader. And so what I want you to do is I want you to do that. I want you to finish that sentence 10 times, once on each of the 10 small pieces of paper, or if you don't have 10 small pieces, you can finish that sentence 10 times on a paper, make sure there's space in between them. And I'm going to give you, not very long, I'm going to give you 4 minutes. So it has to be what first comes to your mind to fill that out. What's important about this is that you are filling out actual verbs or nouns, not adjectives. So I wouldn't say I am a blonde. Well, I'm a fake blonde, and you can tell now because I haven't been to a hairdresser for 2 months. But I have curly hair. Like, it wouldn't be a descriptor of you. It would be those things that more represent who you are, what you love to do, and also maybe what you don't love to do. I am a housekeeper. Those types of things. So I'll just give you a few minutes. It's very important that you actually do this exercise, and I can't see you. I can't tell if you are, but I'm going to have faith that you are, because if you don't, you will not get as much out of this presentation. So I encourage you to do it. If you get really stuck, you can say, you know, I'm a second cousin, third removed. I don't know. And I guess I will ask the moderator if anyone has any questions about this particular activity I can answer.
It doesn't look like anyone has any questions about this in particular. There are a couple that have come in.
Okay.
Never mind. Someone just did ask, can you use adjectives like good, quotation strong?
If so long as it's like a good something, like a good runner, which I wish I was, or a good, it has to have something at the end of that. But yeah, if you want to use an adjective to describe something that you are, like a good mother, you could do that. Okay, I'm going to give you one more minute. It's okay, they don't have to be perfect. You've got 10. And I've never done this exercise virtually without being able to see people, so I'm taking a risk. I'm diving into the deep end here. I'm just going to have faith.
Well, we're happy to be your guinea pigs on this.
All right. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, if you have them on sheets of paper, I want you to spread them out so that you can see them all. If you wrote them on one sheet of paper, obviously you're going to see them all because hopefully they're on one side, and that would be very important. I want you to be able to look at them all, look them over, and I want you to pick the one you're going to give up. And you need to take that and you need to turn it over. And if you didn't have the small pieces of paper, you need to cross it out fully. And this is no longer a part of who you are. And I want you to feel that. And now you should have 9. And I want you to look those over. And I want you to pick the one that you're going to give up. And I want you to turn that over or cross it out. And it is no longer a part of who you are. And if I could see you, my guess is that you guys are like, this is not as fun as I thought it was going to be. And just feel that. Feel how that feels. And now you should have 8. I want you to look them over. And I want you to pick the next one that you're going to give up. And turn it over. And it's no longer a part of who you are. Or cross it out. And now you should have 7. Look them over and pick the one that you're going to either turn over or cross out, and it's no longer a part of who you are. Visualizing what that feels like. Now you should have 6. I want you to look them over and pick the next one that you're going to give up. Turn it over or cross it out. It's no longer a part of who you are. And now you should have 5. And I want to just pause here because it's just become apparent to me that part of some of the emotional reactions that I had to COVID-19 and all of the changes that were enforced upon me was losing some of the 5 that I would have just turned over, no longer having access to them. But I knew that it was time, hopefully, that it was time, that there would be a limit to this, that I'd get it again. But I'm just recognizing that, and it could be that some of you out there had experienced that on the same kind of level. But now you have 5. And my guess is that these are getting into the near and dear, or probably all of them are, but that these get really deeply into the near and dear. And what I'd like you to do, though, is look them over and pick the next one that you're going to give up. And it is no longer a part of who you are, by either turning it over or crossing it out. And now you have 4. And look them over and pick the next one that you're going to give up and turn it over or cross it out. And now you have 3. This is when, if I could see you, some people would be shooting daggers at me with their eyes, saying, "Don't you dare ask me," but I'm going to. And I'd like you to pick the next one that you're going to give up and turn it over or cross it out. And it is no longer a part of who you are. And now you have 2. And once again, I'm going to ask you to pick one of those 2 and turn it over or cross it out. And it is no longer a part of who you are. Oh, I'm able to hear my host, I think. Now you have 1. And I'm not going to make you turn it over. But what I want you to do is look at it, and I want you to think about the experience that you just went through. And when you think about the journey of dementia, and you think about, for me, especially when I think about where a person is in that journey when they are entering into a long-term care facility, that which can cause the most distress is the experience of losing what they would have written down on their 10 sheets of paper. And so there are parallels here. And when people have asked me, what is it that therapeutic recreation specialists do anyway? Like, what is it? What is a recreation therapist? I will often, to answer that question, get them to do this exercise and say, our role is to help ensure that the people who we work with stay connected to the 10 things that they would have written down. And that's not just recreation therapist's role, that is also, I believe, everyone's role within the care team for individuals with dementia. Is how do we help, first of all, how do we help ensure that a person with dementia stays connected to those 10 things that they would have written down? It's why things like baby doll therapy can be such a profound, positive experience for a person with dementia, depending upon where they are in the journey. If they're far enough along that this is something that can help meet that need, that for that person, they would have written down mother. And by engaging in baby doll therapy, when it's done correctly, you're tapping in to the sheet or the line that would have said, I am a mother or a grandmother, and you're honoring that. So that's the experiential learning part of this presentation, and it's just weird to not be able to process it with you. But we'll have an opportunity. I'll make sure that I can answer questions about that. But I hope that helps make sense of how to redefine, begin the process of redefining activity, because really what is most meaningful is activities that would help connect an individual into the feedback, help connect the individual to what the 10 things would have been that they would have written down. So I'm a strong proponent for redefining activities and to not have them just be the structured recreation activities on a calendar, but instead to say every event, encounter, or exchange is an activity, be it a bath, meal, song, or smile. The scope of activities is limitless and does not only include scheduled events provided by the activity staff or the recreation therapist, but every interaction with staff, relatives, and others with dementia. And again, I would say all of those activities, if they're effective, would help connect that person with something that they would have written down. So if we're looking at person-centered programming, and you can see my American heritage here, I spell centered differently every single time, so my apologies. But anyway, there's 3 types of programs. There's productive programs. These are opportunities. These types of programs provide residents with an opportunity to feel useful or needed, or people with dementia with an opportunity to feel useful and needed. I found that these are incredibly important, enabling people to still stay connected to a sense of purpose is essential. And that means that they're not passive recipients of care, but they are also able to be care providers. And how do we ensure that individuals with dementia are able to engage in those activities, things that would make them feel that way, whether or not they're at home still or in community programs or in facility programs. And then there's also leisure programs. These are really relaxational. These are fun. These should be totally pleasurable. These should be where the main outcome is joy, because that's therapeutic in and of itself. And then there's self-care programs. And these help individuals with dementia express their independence and the intimate aspects of their personalities. So taking care of their hair, taking care of laundry, helping set tables, helping wash dishes, helping prepare meals, etc. Programs are most appropriate when they are meaningful to the individual and they reflect his or her interests. In other words, the 10 things. Acknowledge the individual's age, beliefs, culture, lifestyle, and history of life experiences. We can't do that unless we know what they are. And we also have the flexibility within our programs to be able to address that and honor that and enable a continuity of formal life roles. Continuity of past roles and personal rituals are facilitated through interaction, which enables reminiscence and life review, and other activities which validate the importance of the resident's history or life experiences. And again, these don't have to be scheduled programs. These can be quite individualized, and they can be done in small ways as opposed to structured activities. And this is also really important. Regardless of an individual's limitations, role continuity encourages the utilization and maintenance of existing skills and abilities to whatever extent possible, and has the potential to maintain skills and abilities for the greatest length of time possible. And we see that when in a mealtimes study that I recently completed, where we had residents with dementia in a special care unit, we simply having them engage in the activity of setting the table helped them recognize that it is now a mealtime, and then they all sat down at the table and they ate more, and they engaged more. And so we actually were able to increase nutritional intake and liquid intake by having them take part in that. And it also gave them a sense of purpose and meaning. When we look at person-centered programming, we also need to look at resident groupings. And there needs to be an understanding of not just similarity of functional ability, but also acknowledging that social environment has a huge impact, and how can we adapt the groupings to ensure that the social milieu, as they say, is a positive one and helps to support the person engage in the social world around them. As cognitive impairment increases, group size needs to decrease. This is especially true if I'm speaking to individuals who work in care facilities. There's so much pressure to have everyone in the program and to have everyone involved that sometimes that is actually the worst possible thing for some individuals with dementia, though, to be crammed into having too many people in an activity. And so we have to really push against that pressure for the larger parties, or the getting the attendance records up, et cetera, or the attendance participation records high, because that's often actually not in the best interest of individuals with dementia, especially in the later stages, especially if we're wanting active participation. And then also limiting the duration of the recreation programming. Again, we can get really stuck into these blocks of 1 hour increments. And sometimes what we need to do is instead do 2 programs of 20 minutes long to really meet the needs of the clients that we're working with, or the individuals that we're working with, and acknowledge that that is what's best for them, and to be flexible with our programming based on that. And then multi-station activities to enable that sense of empowerment and independence and choice making, where they are able to interact with the activities themselves. And again, programs have to be matched to the participants' ability level to ensure that they're able to successfully participate in it. And finally, because I do want to make sure we have time for questions, because it looks like we have a lot. Okay, just that all staff and family members, when you're at home as well, can empower residents and individuals with dementia and enable opportunities for self-determination and perceived control through enabling them to engage in housekeeping tasks, like have them be a part of it. Enable them to have choice in what clothes they're going to wear, what beverage and snacks they're going to consume, what programs that they're going to attend as well. Like some of my very favorite programs are where we have encouraged residents to actually take leads on hand washing stations and on visiting programs and being of service to other residents around them as well. And then just really quickly, this comes from Hall. This is quite old, but it still is very relevant, that when we see BPSDs, we need to look for 5 stressors that can be most commonly causal factors for them. And one is fatigue, which is one of the reasons why I talk about the smaller groups and also shorter duration programs, a change in environment, routine, or caregiver, misleading stimuli like excessive noise, again, numbers of people, internal or external demands that exceed the person's functioning ability. So when we're asking more of them than what they can do successfully, and then also always looking for pain, dysfunction, discomfort, infections, fatigue, that's up there already, but even hunger or thirst as well. Okay, now I have 15 minutes for questions. Hopefully that's enough.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And my apologies for the slight interruptions earlier. Again, working from home with dogs. So he's So a couple of comments when we were doing the activity earlier. I just wanted to put those into the chat so people could read and maybe understand that they're not feeling or that they weren't feeling alone in some of those negative feelings that does bring up.
Yeah.
So I think most people can see them in the middle there. Just, it feels awful. It's depressing. Don't want to give up anymore. Diminishes who they feel like they are. And I think those are all really important things to highlight for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great activity. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. How can I see the chat? Because I would love to be able to see those. And
So just at that bottom right-hand portion,
yeah.
chat box, you can adjust it up and down if you want to see more or less of it.
Oh no, that's just the attendees. Well, I won't want to take time with that, but yes, isn't that a powerful experience to say? Because oftentimes when I do that exercise, I will have someone call out and say, well, what's the point of living? And that is the point that I'm trying to make, is that is how it feels when you're only just visualizing what it'd be like to lose those things. And oftentimes, as we go on the journey towards just aging in general, but then add the overlay of dementia, we have the risk of losing them for real. And how do we, as care support, care staff, care families, ensure that they stay connected to it?
Mm-hmm. I know you did cover this earlier in the presentation, but someone was just wondering if you could clarify what BPSD is again?
Yeah, so that's the behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. So these are the symptoms of distress. Really, they're they're the symptoms that can often cause distress for the caregivers, and the symptoms that cause distress for the person with dementia as well. It's the term that encapsulates when a person is resisting care, becoming agitated, sometimes moving from agitation into aggression. Oftentimes it's because of frustration and fear.
Okay. Someone was wondering if you're able, do you feel like, can you do the activity for a person that you're caring for?
I wouldn't. I think that it is a profound sensitivity exercise for people who are caregivers, to have an understanding of what they need to be looking for in even how they're deciding on what to include in their assessment and what to prioritize. So for instance, and I don't know everyone who's out there, but I had a resident, because I worked in long-term care as a recreation therapist for many years, and we would have choir. And I had a resident who absolutely, this would have been one of the last 3 things she would have turned over, was I am a singer in a choir. And bath day her bath was scheduled at the same time as choir. And because bath schedules got moved around, and all of a sudden she was having a bath day on her bath at the same time as choir. And I couldn't move choir. And I went to the nursing staff and I was able to say, choir is in her top 10 things. Like, it's one of the things. And they were like, oh, okay. And so they were willing to adjust it. But if they hadn't gone through that exercise, yeah, no, that wouldn't happen. Not to be rude and mean, but we prioritize when I talk about BPSDs and I say the medical model, I know how hard it is to make a bath list and bath schedule. But things like this, like what are the 10 things, need to be included in that when we are creating that. I don't know if that helps, but to me, this is an exercise that really is more for caregivers and care recipients. Good question, though.
Yeah. So this next one is, I know all activities are individualized, but can you give some examples of meaningful activities?
Yeah. So meaningful activities are those that give that really enhance. Well, there's two categories, really, in my opinion, for meaningful activities. One is that which gives an individual with dementia a sense of purpose and meaning. And that would mean that it would be tapped into probably one of the key roles that they would have listed on one of their 10 things, if that makes sense. Yeah. So for some residents, that is setting the table, because that has meaning and purpose. For others, it is engaging in baby doll therapy, because that has meaning and purpose to them. That role of being a mother, of being a nurturer. I had a resident who probably one of the things that she did is she passed out the clothing protectors at the meal times, and she connected with all of the residents. That activity was hugely. She was an individual who had a stroke and was depressed and did not want to come out of her room. She was very unhappy that she had been admitted to the long-term care facility that I worked at. So giving her a sense of purpose, and I had to care plan that, because the union was against it because it was a nursing job. And then we had to deal with infection control, but we did, because we care planned it and we got it all, like, you have to fight for some of these things. But that activity had meaning for her, absolutely. And other meaningful activities are ones that enable joy, just pure joy. For some residents, like, I am not a cook. Like, I would not write, I am a cook. And I know many people, like, I'm married to a sourdough bread baker now. I mean, he has become a master sourdough guy. And I'm so grateful that he is. And he would put, I'm a baker. And so that would be meaningful for him. But if you put me in a baking class, that's not meaningful for me. I want to eat it, but I don't want to bake it. So it's really about tapping into that which brings a sense of joy and connection to who we are as people. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. So the next question is, my family used to be a handyman around the home/farm. Now he cannot do the same things he used to and gets frustrated when he can't do the task right. Any suggestions on activities and things he can do that is modified?
Yeah. So one of the things that we always talk about is failure-free activities. And there's ways to adapt anything to be failure-free. Now, if you have an individual, so I'm a type A, I'm a perfectionist. And I know that if I end up on the dementia journey, that it's going to be very hard for people to ensure that I'll believe that it's failure-free. And so if this gentleman falls into that category, it is more challenging. However, one of the things that you're able to do is to ask for help. Ask him if it's like we call it a therapeutic need. You create a therapeutic need. He's a handyman. He wants to be able to help and fix things. So you can actually have something that you may have broken. Like, in other words, you know how to fix it, but you go to him and you say, can you help me with this? Because I can't figure this out. And then as he is working with it, you can cue him and he can be a part of it. And he also might just blow your mind and say, well, no, yeah, you think it, but we could actually do it this way. And you create that success. One of my very favorite therapeutic needs that I saw happen is we had a resident who is a nurturer herself, and she would give the care aides neck massages, and they'd line up, and they weren't making this up, they needed it, but it was, I've never seen her smile so much as when she did that. And it's that sense of being useful. What won't work is if you give this person, this gentleman, this family member something and expect it to, like, it's going to have to be something that you do together. And there's cueing and everything that, like, and you're really honoring everything. And if he's frustrated with something, it's kind of like you guys are in this together because you don't get it either, but you're going to why don't we try this? And and to be creative with that. I hope that that helps. But there are things that even like painting, like getting his help in doing things that you've created that you need help with. I hope that that makes sense.
Okay. You definitely have a few more questions, if that's okay. I'll try to
Sure.
get to everyone, but please, if I do miss you, feel free to send it back to the Society and we can hopefully get it answered. So can a family member request a rec therapist assessment for an at-home program with the goal of keeping them at home longer?
It depends upon the community. Like, for instance, I know that in the South Zone, in the universe, like where I am located in Lethbridge, that they have community-based recreation therapists. And I don't know all of the processes for that, but I know that it is actually physician ordered, and the recreation therapist will go into the homes and do assessments. I don't know if that's, so I don't know, unfortunately. But definitely that's something to reach out to the recreation therapists from Alberta Health Services, AHS, and you should be able to find them because they have clinical practice leads in each of the zones. But oh man, do I ever think that that is what's needed.
That would be great to have all across the province, for sure.
Yes, let's advocate for that, because I believe strongly that if you have that at home, it's a big part of being able to keep people at home. And if that's where we're going, then we also need to value this and the services that we offer as much as others.
Yeah. So the next question is, are there strategies that can be used with a person with dementia who does not want to participate in any activities, who consistently declines to participate?
Yes. So one of the things that I've found is that for the residents that I've worked with who always say no to recreation, especially, I'm assuming that this is in a long-term care facility or a continuing care facility, typically the reason that they're saying no is because it's to recreation therapy specifically is because it's the only place where they are allowed to say no. When they have lost choice and control over so many other things, when they eat, what they wear, when they get up, when they can go to the toilet, their ability to say no can oftentimes feel like it's confined to the one thing that they may actually want to say yes to, for lack of a better way. And so when a resident says no to me over and over, I always say to them, it's absolutely your choice to say no. Absolutely. I completely understand that. And I'm going to honor that. And I want you to know that because I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to say yes or no to me every single time. I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you every single time. And to be able to really honor that choice and tell them that you value that and you honor that, sometimes that alone can, instead of resisting it, can quote unquote win them over. The other thing that I do with those individuals is I had one-on-one activity carts and it's just a smorgasbord of different things on that cart. And I know right now with COVID-19, that would be next to impossible to do, but there's a way, like we've got to find it. And that's what I would take into the room. And there was always going to be something on that cart. And if there wasn't anything on that cart that the individual was interested in at all, then I had to find it. And that was through assessment, in understanding who that person was and what would tap into them and motivate them to actually come out.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers.
So this one, I suppose, kind of leads into that a little bit. So how do you get the person to have a sense of enjoyment and desire to do the things that they used to enjoy? For example, my mom would love to garden and cook, but just resides herself to let others, caregivers, do.
So that type, when a person turns to passive behaviors, it's oftentimes because they are unable to see what they can still do. So they have these expectations that if they can't do it exactly the way they used to do it before, that they won't do it at all. And so how I've always addressed that is through adaptation of the activity. So, but that also means that, and that's the skill of, that's what we're trained to do as recreation therapists. So I'm not saying this is simple, but it does take a creative hat, and it takes some insight. So how do you adapt that and bring it to her and show her so that she can still participate at certain levels? And again, getting her to engage in it by creating a therapeutic need, by saying that you need some help, by asking her, like, I got these little tomato starters and I'm not quite sure. Do you have any suggestions? Like letting her know that you need her and that you value her contribution to this, as opposed to you wanting her to do it for her. I know it's a subtle difference, but it can be a really big one to help bridge the person back in.
Okay. I just wanted to add, someone had made a comment. They said in Edmonton, the home care coordinator will request a consult, which I'm assuming is in regards to a recreation therapist. So I'm going to do just one more question, and then I think we'll wrap it up for the evening. Okay. Dr. Casper, I have had a couple of people request your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
We typically leave that up to the presenter. If that's possible, it will be on the Yasant Cafe. If not, we hope people have taken notes throughout the evening.
Well, if it's going to still be on the Yasant, I don't know, are they able to access it through that, or are they wanting to just write to me to ask for the PowerPoint? Is that what you mean?
Typically, in a presentation like this, we do get requests that people would like the PowerPoint, but that's completely up to the presenter.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. You have it. You can
okay. Great. So the recording and the PowerPoint from tonight will be available tomorrow on the Asant Cafe under our live meetings section. And I will finish with one last question, if that's okay. Yeah. And then we will say goodnight. So the staff at the long-term care are suggesting we stop coloring my mom's hair pre-COVID. And I feel that coloring her hair is a top 4 for my mom. How do I negotiate a situation like this?
I guess what I would say is come at it as a collaborator. In the sense that I would want to gain more information as to why they're requesting this. And that information just helps you, first of all, it does help you become more part of the team, because you're wanting to understand their point of view. And in addition to that, I would talk about why this is more than just getting her hair done, that this is a part of who she is. You know that it's important to her, that when she looks in the mirror, or when this, and come to the table with that type of openness. If that, and I know how, I mean, I was a family caregiver in addition to being working in long-term care. And as a family caregiver, my eyes were opened so much more. I learned so much from that experience. And then also being on the staff side. And so whatever you can do to ensure that sense of team, that we're working on this together. But if you can gain information from them to find out what it is that is their fear and their concern, and then say, well, what can we do to make this still work for everyone? Because for my family member, getting her hair done is very important to her. So, and actually, literally, instead of it's just all or nothing, but go through each of the concerns and figure out, like, get them on board with figuring out how to get to success. how to make this work, and be willing to be creative and be willing to try things out that may not work, and acknowledge that didn't work, and then try something else out. There's just a flexibility there. I don't know. I mean, it's not a simple answer, but it's not a simple solution either. I hope that answered.
Yes, the person said your answer does help a lot. So that's
good.
Great. So I'm just going to make one last comment. So I had posted just as it was a comment for people to note that Anand Preet, and my apologies if I misread your name. She had just discussed how music-based programs were really helpful and has seen the results. And a couple of people in the comments also said they really enjoyed that. So I'd like to let people know that we are actually piloting a online sing-along next week with one of our partners. Yeah, we're going to try that out and see how it goes. So we just wanted to let people know tonight that will be happening next Thursday, May 28th at 1 p.m. on the cafe, exactly where you are tonight. And we'd love for as many people to join as possible. Sarah is a singer and a choir conductor. She presented last week on the Assant Cafe. And yeah, we just would like to try and do something a little bit different, maybe see how it goes. So I wanted to let everyone know about that.
Awesome. And can I just say one more thing before we close? I just want, I'm going to try not to tear up, but I'm going to fail. I just want to say for all of you who might be on this call who are working in long-term care, I applaud you every night at 7. And I think you're amazing, and I honor you, and I honor the fact that you've chosen this line of work to give of yourself and your heart and your soul and your spirit, and thank you for choosing that, because you're invaluable, and especially in times like these, I hope you feel the appreciation, not just from me, but from everywhere. So thank you.
Aww. What really great words to end on. Because yeah. I think we're all thinking the exact same thing is yeah, what a dedication it's been these past few months for those people.
Yes.
In a not easy role.
No.
So, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
With that, I will say thank you again to you for your time, Dr. Kasper, and I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation tonight, and we'll be signing off now.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.